So welcome to my YouTube channel. That's what we call the good life. I'm up my allotment and we're going to be talking about all the things you can plant and sow in the month of July. Now we're midway through the year. Our allotments are nearly full up, but I've got a few spaces. I've actually got a few things that have finished that I'm now going to put something else where they were. So there are plenty of things you can be sowing. In fact, there's lots and lots of things you can be sowing this time of year, and I'm going to be going through some of your options today. Now, first of all, I get a lot of people ask me, do I recommend any books? I've got to say, this book here, Allotment Month by Month by Alan Buckingham, is absolutely fantastic. So if you want to get one of those, I'll put a link up on the screen and one in the description if that would benefit you at all. But it's a really awesome book and some really great pictures and diagrams, and yeah, really brilliant. I love it. Moving on to what you can be sowing and planting. Now, if you've not already put out some of your brassica plants, it's best to get them out this month now, otherwise it's going to be a little bit too late. The other thing, when you put any brassicas in, whether it's cauliflowers, cabbages, broccoli, Brussels, you name it, it's really a good idea to net them, because there's a lot of pests that can attack them. You know, there's the cabbage butterfly, there's pigeons, there's other midges, there's all sorts, and animals as well. And so I always net my brassicas for the whole duration, because some people have asked, how long do I net them for? I net them for all the time I'm going to be eating them for, basically. I've got some Enviromesh over my broccoli here, which is really good. It's really durable. It is a little bit dearer than some of the other netting I'm going to talk about, but when you're trying to keep so many things off, Enviromesh is a really good option, and probably the best option, but one of the dearer ones, I've got to say. I will put a link up on the screen and one in the description if that would benefit you at all. And the way I hold them up is either with canes or just with these hoops here. And all this is plastic hose, plastic water pipes that go in the ground. This is all this is. It's nothing fancy. I buy a great big reel of it and I cut it to size, and I just push them in the ground, and then I just weigh it down with pegs or bricks or whatever I can hold it down with. Again, if you haven't got any of this and you would like to get some, I do have an Amazon shop, which I do have to say I make a little bit of money out, and I will put a link up on the screen and one in the description if you'd like to get one of those for yourself as well. Now, you can still start a few brassicas off from seed, so do be mindful if you are starting them off from seed, because they're going to be for next spring, so they're not going to grow quickly enough for you to get them this year. And do check they are the ones that you could be sowing this time of year. I've got an all year round cauliflower that I know that is, and there are definitely some types of cabbage that you can sow any time of the year, but obviously do check that it is meant to be for this time of the year. Another really great thing to sow is some Florence fennel, which I absolutely adore. This is the type, this is actually a different one. It's not the Florence fennel, it's a D Ferens, the same kind of thing. It's the one that produces the bulb, because two types of fennel, one that's just for herb and one that turns into a bulb. I absolutely love a little bit of fennel. I find I don't need that much, but I do always put a little bit in every single year, and this is another really good one. Pak choy is another one, quite fast growing. You can wait for them to get quite large, or you can eat them quite small. So pak choy is another really great thing you can be popping in the ground now. If you've not planted your leeks, that's too late to sow seed, but mine went in about a week or two ago, so they went in the ground. So if you've not planted your leeks out, this is the month to get them in by, otherwise you're going to be leaving it a little bit too late. Which leads me on to French beans and runner beans. Definitely something, if you're going to be planting any of these or any more of these, you definitely want to be getting them out in July. I love French and runner beans. In fact, I probably favour the French ones more, and I freeze so many every single year, but you really must get them out this year. You do. It's worth soaking them overnight and then putting between some wet tissue and letting them sprout, and then they germinate much better if you've never done it that way before. So other things you can do in is your leafy greens. Now, these are ones that do grow quite quickly and you'll get this year. I've got a few types of leafy greens here. I've got some rainbow chard, I've got some curly kale and some Cavanero kale as well. They're really good to put in this time of year, and they grow quite quickly, so worth getting those in, and they overwinter as well. That's the other really great thing about the kales and the chards, they overwinter, so you've got something to keep you going all the time. So other things you can be growing are salad leaves. and all those kind of leaves associated with salad. So I've got a lovely mixed lettuce bunch there, where I've got a whole host of different types of lettuces, which is quite lovely to grow, because then obviously you've got a nice mixture. Sorrel is another really lovely one, which is nice to have in the garden, and that stays in the garden. It's quite hardy, so it can go over winter. And wild rocket is my favourite, but this is a different variety here, only because quite often the wild rocket just keeps self-seeding. And Mizuno is another really good one for sowing this time of year. Something else that's quite pretty and adds a lot of colour to your salads is Mustard Oriental Ruby Streaks. So another really lovely one there. So there's a few other things which, although you could try and plant them next month, personally, if it was me and I wanted to get any more beetroot in, this month would be the month to get it in. So I've got a lovely golden eye there and a Bolt Hardy. Beetroot is one of those ones which doesn't get used enough and only gets used to be pickled, but you can do so many other things with it. You can do brownies, I've done curries with beetroot, there's all sorts of weird and wonderful things you can do with it. I love it roasted with balsamic vinegar and rosemary and garlic, so don't just pickle it, do some slightly different things with it. Grated in salads, another really great thing. So a really lovely thing to grow if you've never grown it before, and to do some more adventurous recipes this year. And like I said, carrots, if you're going to be putting carrots in this time of the year, again, pick your variety. You want a faster growing one. The Chantenay and these Amsterdam Forcing 3 are really good ones, because they grow that little bit quicker and you're more likely to get them quicker. You don't want ones that are going to take too long to mature, bearing in mind we're a little bit late planting them in the season. Good old-fashioned turnips, I've got a lovely snowball variety there. That's another one that you can pop in the ground. So lots of these you can just pop straight in the ground as well. That's the other good thing about this time of year. If you can start things off in module trays if you want, but pretty much all the things I've spoken about, I'll be popping them straight into the ground. I won't be faffing around in pots, because I'm not having to worry about frost or anything like that now. Having said that, the exception is spring onions, because I cannot get spring onions to germinate very well in the ground. I do start these off in a little pot and then I pop them out. So I've got some that I've just recently transplanted, which I'll show you when we move up to the raised bed later. So I start these off in a little pot and then I transplant them, only purely because I don't know whether they don't germinate or whether something eats them. Who knows? Who knows? Now let's move up to the raised bed and I'll show you some of the things that I'm going to be planting now. So I'm now up at the raised beds and I'm going to be planting a few things today. I did mention that I would tell you about the other netting that I use, and it's this scaffolding netting here. Really good for keeping birds off. Really good. It can keep other stuff off, but obviously the Enviromesh is the big guns, whereas this does work perfectly well for keeping birds off things like my blueberries. And when I planted a lot of seeds out here, I put the hoops in and I just put the green netting in just to keep the birds or other animals coming in and nibbling the little seedlings as they came through. So I'm going to pop in some coriander. So herbs are a really good thing you can start off this time of year. I've got basil, I've got coriander, and parsley is another good one, but I haven't got any more seed. And my parsley, with some of these things like the coriander, they go to seed, so I've had to pull out what I originally planted in, whereas your coriander will go probably almost through the winter. Sometimes it does go through the winter, whereas the coriander, annoyingly, I have to successional sow that, so I've had to pull out the old stuff, although I've ate a lot of it in the meantime, and pop some more in. Now my top tip with coriander, if you've never watched my channel before, is a lovely lady that I used to travel to London with on the coach gave me a top tip, because she used to grow a lot of coriander. And what you do, that's why I've got it in the tub, you lightly crush the seeds with your pestle and mortar, so you don't break them, and grind them right down to a powder, but you just slightly break the seeds just so they germinate that little bit easier, because I'd said to her I could never get them to germinate. It's amazing the conversations you have with random people on coaches. So that's what I've done, and I'm just going to pop them in the ground. I'm just going to take that weed out. So whenever you're sowing any seeds, just, if there's any twigs or stones or anything in the way, just move it out the way. So I'm just going to do a little, take a little bit of soil away so I can pop these seeds in, like so. And something I also always do when I put seeds in is I water the ground a little bit first, just so the seeds go onto some moist ground. I mean, obviously if it's been really wet you wouldn't need to, but it's been really dry in Kent just lately, which is lovely to get the beautiful sunny weather, but it means that your seeds are going onto very dry soil. So I'll put a little bit of water in, just like that, and then I get my coriander seeds and I love the smell of them even before they've grown. I adore coriander. We had some with our dinner yesterday, and I was upset when my other stuff went to seed, so unfortunately I've left a tiny little bit, and I'm hoping it will still be palatable. So it looks like I've possibly crushed a little bit more than I need, but maybe I'll put some into pots when I get back and give it away. But I think that should be enough seed for me there. So I'll pop that back in there, and then just gently cover it over. So obviously herbs, you can just pick up pots of herbs and plant them in the garden. You don't have to start them off from seed. If you need them quickly, then obviously you can do that. I need to be careful because I just remembered I've got some leeks in there as well. I do squeeze things in a little bit in my garden, but you know, it all kind of works. You have to fit in what you can. That's the one good thing about the raised beds. You can generally squeeze things in a little bit more. So just gently even it out. And then when you water your seeds in, always water seedlings in, or seeds with a rose on, because you don't want to splurge all your seeds everywhere. So just gently water those in. I'll probably give them a little bit more of a water before I leave today. So the other item I'm going to be putting in, again, radishes were the same things as the coriander. I planted some in quite early on in the season, and they came along beautifully, and we ate them in various dishes. Again, something else. Don't just eat radishes in salads, you can put them in stir fries. If they're big enough, you can cook them, you can roast them. There's lots of things you can do. So I'm going to do a similar thing here. Just use my trowel to make a slight indentation here. I've actually got a different type of radish. I think they grow quite big. I think a friend of me gave some to me ages ago. It was something called Mooley, Mino Early. Although it says early, we can sow between May and August. So I thought, do you know what, I'm going to try something a little bit different. So I need to follow my own advice and water that first a little bit. We have been up earlier today and done a little bit of weeding, and we did give some of this a bit of a water, but even so, I've got the water in the watering can, so I might as well do it. There we go. So I've got one more thing to plant after this, and I'll be done for the day. I don't know what it's like where you are, but it's jolly hot here. So I'm coming up here, I'm doing a bit, I'm going back, and then I'm cooling down. So it's too hot to be up here for too long. Right, there's not too many in there. I'll probably put them all out. And then we just gently sprinkle these in. And we'll have to see what these transpire to. I'm quite excited about this, really. So there we go, just gently. I've got to say, I'm not one of these people that puts my seeds in really carefully. I have that intention, but normally it gets a bit too hot. I get a bit too tired, and I don't want to go back with just a couple in the packet, so I'll probably just chuck them all in. If they get too thick, I can always thin them out. And then just gently, like we did before. So when you've got little seeds like this, you just put a very tiny amount of compost over the top, not much at all, because you just want to very carefully cover the seeds so they can easily pop through. And gently pat that down. There we go. Let's move these out of the way before I water. So again, with the rose on, just give it a little bit of a gentle water. There we go. And now let's head off into my makeshift polytunnel and plant my last seeds. Well, it's not exactly a polytunnel. It's a vegetable and fruit cover made out of an old trampoline and some scaffolding netting, but it does what I need it to do, and it protects things and keeps them a little bit warmer when I need them to. So let's head on inside and I'll get planting. So I'm in my, what I call my polytunnel. Fortunately, it looks like a badger's been in here as well, so I'm going to have to fix that up before I go, unfortunately. That's what happens here. We have quite a lot of wild animals up at the allotment. So before I move on to the last item, if you've enjoyed watching this video, you can do something called Buy Me a Coffee. There will be a link up on the screen and one in the description, and it just helps me run this channel a little bit better. I very much enjoy doing it, and I would do it anyway, but if you'd like to buy me a coffee, that would be marvellous. So my last item I'm going to be planting are some peas, and in fact these are a Mange 2 variety. I grew some at home early in the season and I was so incredibly impressed with them, I thought I'd do a few more. I really love this variety. They grew much taller than I thought they would. I've had lots and lots of peas out of them, but those ones are finished off. And if you want to do something like this as well, I would personally do something like a mange too, because they don't have to form a whole a big piece. You're just eating the pods themselves. What I do, same with the beans, I forgot to soak them early enough, so all I've done is just soak them overnight, but that will still really help them germinate. So what I should have done is soak them overnight, put them between some tissue and let them sprout in a couple of days. Haven't had time for that, so I've just soaked them overnight, but it's still better than not soaking them at all. So again, just with a small trowel, you'll need to pop them down a little bit deeper than what you would do with the other ones. So I'll do a much deeper indentation with my trowel. I could use a dibber, so I'm using this, but I could quite easily just use a dibber. So very, very easily, I'm just going to do what probably will end up being a couple of rows, and I'll spread them out and I'll pop them in. So again, nothing too difficult. You don't have to be particularly clever. I don't worry too much about where they're spread out. They'll do perfectly fine. I'd rather have a few extra in there if somebody decides to start eating them personally, rather than not have enough. There we go, I've definitely got enough for a second row. Let's pop those in there, another one. There we go, nice and easy. A lovely, lovely crop to grow. Again, they're lovely in salads, they're lovely in stir fries, they're lovely with roast dinners. You know, they're so incredibly versatile, things like this, and really easy to grow. I would recommend covering them, only because the birds really seem to like them. So growing them in here is absolutely perfect for them, because they don't need to be any warmer, and you wouldn't need them any warmer this time of the year anyway, because it's not cold at all. But if some of them are a little bit close together, so I could move them around a little bit. So there we go. A few over there, and again, just gently cover them over like so, and I'll give them a really good water as well. Now, if you've enjoyed watching this video and you're wondering what else you can be doing on your allotment, please check out my next video on the screen.